Hey, I just wanted to jump back on here um, because I remembered that Halloween is 7 days after my birthday. And it became a sad time for me because um, I also, in my life, was a bank teller. I used to work at several banks, also while I was still working, you know, at my 30-year gig. And I would take a bag to work in the mornings, and I would be a bank teller in the morning for like 4 hours, and then I would leave and I would go in the afternoon about 3 or 4, and I would go over to the other job. Well, prior to this particular day, I had spoke with my teller's manager, who I can say her name is Dawn. And Dawn had two sons. One had cerebral palsy, and she had asked the rest of us, you know, who is Blade? It's like back, this was back like 2005 or something like that. It was like, oh, Blade is, Wesley Snipes. He was Blade, and he had a trench coat and he had swords in his jacket. So, and he fight crime. And so she said, well, one of the boys, and it was a boy that had cerebral palsy, the son that had cerebral palsy, and he wanted to be Blade. And I was like, cool, that's easy. Just get a raincoat, go find some of those Halloween swords that are probably in the stores, and that's it. That'd be good. That's pretty much all he probably wants. She was like, oh, okay, that's cool. And see, I didn't know back then. I could have just Googled it, but I don't think there was Google. If it was, we didn't talk about Google. And this was in the mid 2000s again. So anyway, she was really quiet, real quiet that morning. And I was leaning next to her, and I kind of bumped her and said, hey, how are you? Are you okay? She's like, I don't feel too good. And I was like, oh, well, I'm sorry to hear. So, because we always had our little fun time behind the line before the doors opened at 9. And it was like maybe 5 minutes to 9 before it was time to open up. And we were, being silly as usual. And I kind of like bumped her, and we laughed. And then she laughed back. And then next thing you know, she like fell over on me. And I thought she was bending down to reach down in her coin vault, so I kind of like stepped back to get out of her way, and she hit the floor. She started shaking. What I thought was, I don't know, convulsions, or I didn't know what it was, but I immediately jumped down and I held her, because I hear sometimes when people have seizure, you shouldn't put your hands in their mouth, but you should do something to press down their tongue so that they don't swallow their tongue. I don't know. And so I was holding her in my arms, and so now it's like literally 9 o'clock, and the rest of the coworkers was like, oh my God, what do we do? It's like, keep the doors locked and call 911. She's really, call the ambulance. And so we didn't open up. They called the ambulance, and next thing you know, she was on the floor, and immediately the emergency response was there. Like, it couldn't have been 5 after 9, and they were there. And so one of the responders said, hey, is she on medication? Do you know her medical history? And we're like, no. Like, everybody froze. And he's like, well, does she take medicine? And I was like, I thought that I knew her son had cerebral palsy, but I was like, maybe she has medication in her car. Should I go run and check? Because her purse was there and her keys was there. And they was like, yes, go check, So immediately I grabbed her keys. I ran outside. I looked around in the glove compartment. There were some medication bottles in there. And at the time I had also said, call her mom, call her mom. So, and her mom didn't live that far from there. So when I ran out to the car, and they were behind the wall, the way that the partitions were. You walk in and you can't see behind our station unless you walk in and you turn the corner, and then she was right there where they were working on her. So as I came back in the door, there's Dawn. And she says, and I was like, oh my God, thank God you're okay. And she looked at me and she said, I said, oh my God, we called your mom. Your mom's on the way. She's like, tell my mom I'm okay. And I was like, oh, well, she's on her way. You can tell her yourself. And, and she looked at me and she walked out the door. She said, just tell her I'm okay. And she walks out. She turns left and she goes to the back of the building where we park our cars, where I just came from. And I guess her mom finally came in, and then they all immediately left and went to the emergency room. And it was so crazy. So now I come back in and I look behind the line and they're still working on her. Now I'm done. I just talked. Didn't I just tell you guys I just talked to her? She just walked past me. So they picked her up and I saw her mom, and they all went to the emergency room, and we're just sitting there. We're in shock. I didn't say anything to the girls at first. I just sat there. And while we were sitting there, not a half an hour later, the phone rings. They tell us she expired. Now, I don't know what to say, because I'm like, I'm still in shock. I don't know what I just saw, or if I blacked out and dreamed that I just spoke to Dawn. So I was a mess. So about maybe an hour later, we're still sitting there, and they're sending people to come and talk to us, because it was just crazy. And so I said to them, I said, I just talked to Dawn. And they was like, when? I said, when I came back from outside. Remember I ran out there with her car keys and I went to look and I brought the medicine back in? And they said, yeah. I said, I just talked to her. They was like, and now, honestly, I'm the only black woman, so I'm thinking they think I'm some crazy black woman. So I said to them, I was like, they was like, you saw her? I said, yeah, I spoke to her. They was like, what did she say? I said, she told me to tell her mom that she was okay. And I said, and I told her just what I told you guys. I said, I told her, your mom's on her way. You can tell her yourself. And she looked at me again and said, tell my mother I'm okay. I said, and I watched her walk away, turn left, and go out the back door. And they're looking at me, and they looked at me and they said, we believe you. Oh my goodness. Tears was just rolling down my eyes. And they was like, you gotta tell her mother. I was like, no, I'm not gonna tell her that. This woman gonna think I'm crazy. I said, listen, we believe you. We believe you. Just tell her. Now, there was no way I was gonna see this woman. She had went home, So I had some pins made in honor of Dawn in the color of our bank color. I won't tell you the bank colors, because then you might know what bank it is. But, we go to the funeral, And that's, we attend the service and her boys was there. And then we happened to be, and they was like, did you tell her mother yet? And I'm like, no, I'm not going to tell her. They was like, listen, she asked you to tell her mother. You got to tell her. You're never probably going to see this lady ever again. We're all going to go on with our lives. It was like, you got to tell her. And I was like, all right. So her mom was outside having a cigarette. This was outside of the funeral home. So I walked out there and I said hi, and I addressed her by her last name. And she said, oh, yeah, I know. She said, oh, I know. She said, Dawn talks about you all the time. Said, you're really nice. I said, yeah, I loved her. I love Dawn. And she said, I said, I got to tell you something. And she was like, what? And I said, do you remember the day that it happened? She said, yeah. I said, well, I had ran out to check her car to see if there was any medication out in the glove compartments, because first responders said, yeah, go look and see if there's, some medicine or something. And I said, and when I came back in, I had walked past, as I was walking back to the teller line, I ran into Dawn. And she was like, and she's just listening to me. I said, and I was like, whew, thank God you scared us. I said, when you fell on the floor, I said, I didn't know what to think. I said, and Dawn looked at me and she said, tell my mother I'm okay. And I was like, well, she's on her way. You can tell your mom herself when she gets here. And she said, tell my mother I'm okay. I said, okay. And I just kind of shook it off. So I'm telling her mom, I said, so after Dawn walked past me, she went out the door and she kind of went to the left, to the back. I said, I get back behind the teller line. I said, and they're still working on Dawn on the floor. And I mean, tears was just, coming down my eyes. And the mother looked at me. She said, I believe you. I said, you do? She said, yeah. She said, when you were walking in, I saw Dawn walk in the back. I was like, you saw her? She said, yeah. She said, I was confused too, because I'm like, why are they making me run down here if Dawn is walking out the back door? She practically died in my arms because, even everybody said that, I had jumped down on the floor to help her, because I had some CPR training and stuff, but that was the hardest thing. And so every Halloween, I think about Dawn. So, but the day that she had passed, the incident, I had gone to work at the post office, and I was over there working. I can remember my one of my old bosses, we'll just say RB, and Miss RB walked by me and she said, hey, what's up, V? And I was like, nothing. She's like, why you looking like that? She said, you look like you saw a ghost. And I told her, I said, well, I was at work this morning and my supervisor passed away. I said, and I was trying to help her. She said, listen, kid, go home.